Joining us on the program now from the Social Policy and Parliamentary Unit of the Salvation Army, Ana Ika. Ana, kia ora, nice to see you again.
Morena, Andrew, thanks for having me.
So, situation is pretty tough for people that are looking for work at the moment. We're hearing, some shocking reports about how many people applying for a limited number of jobs. Sanctions on beneficiaries. Now, you and I talked about this when they were first introduced. I suppose let's cut to the chase. Are they working? Are they helping beneficiaries?
From our perspective, and for those that we support, no. I think it's creating a lot of stress. It's creating a lot of hardship. It's perpetuating a lot of the poverty levels that we're seeing. But just to provide some context, Andrew, with the government, with the new traffic light sanctioning that the government is doing, it's only about 2% of those that are on welfare that are being sanctioned.
Yeah.
So out of, from the December numbers, there's about 350,000 on welfare, and only about 4,000 of those are being sanctioned. And the compliance rate for those that are being sanctioned is extremely high. So people are compliant when they are sanctioned.
Yep.
But I guess from our perspective and the work that we do, we work on that sharper end of the spectrum and supporting people, because majority of those that we support are beneficiaries, but not all beneficiaries come through our doors. So that's to imply that for many that the welfare system actually works, but for a significant portion that we support, it doesn't necessarily work. So sanctions are making it a lot tougher for the families that we are supporting.
Now, so that's a good context to have. For most people, the sanctions don't apply. For some people, it may be encouraging them to say, hey, look, if I'm going to keep my benefit, I need to apply for some jobs. I need to demonstrate that I'm trying to find work here. In some cases, is it motivational? Are you seeing any positive outcomes here?
It's not really a sort of a straightforward answer, Andrew, because MSD and Work and Income, they sort of have a process that they work with beneficiaries to try and get them into employment. And so the fact that beneficiaries aren't necessarily engaging in that process prior to, and then they get sanctioned, there's often underlying reasons as to why that disengagement is happening. And we see that a lot through our food bank. When families are coming in, we sit with them, we try and figure out, what are the causes of this need for food. And oftentimes it's often complex around family dynamics, around financial hardship, around mental health, around addictions. And so ultimately, Work and Income are trying to support people into jobs, but necessarily, unfortunately, all of these complex issues that a lot of our whānau is sort of dealing with is sort of not dealt with at the same time. And so I guess from our perspective, we're trying to ensure that, they've got CVs, they've got cover letters, but that they are also dealing with those other complex issues in their lives as well.
And those complexities are so important in order to have a fuller understanding of this, not just people that could work but are choosing not to. When the government introduced the sanctions, they seem to give a clear message that this is only for people who are able to work. This is only for people who are in a space where they have the capacity, physically and mentally, to be able to engage in job searching. You would think that if that was the case, then those people who have a complexity of needs, the sanctions wouldn't apply, but in practice, that seems to be not the case.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the case because, a lot of complexities that our whānau are dealing with are not necessarily, on that extreme acute end of mental health or and so sometimes it's complexities with family issues, sometimes it's complexities with children. I mean, we're humans and we all have our different complexities. And so it's a matter of trying to acknowledge and work together with the whānau that we support. Like, for example, Andrew, we have one of our some staff that work for the Salvation Army. I mean, they've sort of come through those processes of having a number of complexities around health, around disabilities, but because they were supported and advocated for to get into employment, and then not only that, they were brought in a tethered sort of format. So they weren't brought in full-time. They were brought in to volunteer,
Yep.
and then they picked up hours, and then they eventually moved into full-time. I think that progression is sort of the key in working with individuals that have complexity, so that at the same time as trying to get them back into the flow of what does it look like to wake up and have to be somewhere in the morning.
Yeah.
And then also on the other end of that, having to deal with the other challenges that they have in life, and having an employer that can sort of meet them halfway and acknowledge those hardships. But it's about patience, and it's about having time for people and to help them find their feet back into employment. I think there's a lack of, I think employers are willing and able to do that if they were sort of given the opportunity.
Yeah.
And so there are other agencies out there that are trying to work with employers around those with complex needs to try and get them back into employment, slowly, but not don't just drop them in the deep end, because you're setting them up for failure.
And so the sort of complex needs that you can't necessarily get a doctor's note for, but actually needs organisations such as the Salvation Army and others to really work alongside and unpack some of these complexities and encourage and motivate people to be able to take the next step. This is a wonderful program, but in some ways you can understand the employers or potential employers' situation if there is an oversupply of people looking for work. If there is so many people looking for work all at the same time, then can you understand that an employer is saying, well, actually, we're just going to go for the best applicant, which may look like somebody who doesn't have these complex needs? Is that a fair enough statement in some ways?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely fair that employers, because they're about productivity and wanting to get the job done, that they would they would prefer an individual that doesn't come in with complex needs. But I think there are a lot of social service agencies and other agencies out there that do take the time, and I think it's about sort of having people come alongside them and advocate for them,
Yeah.
and just employers giving them a chance. I mean, not all employers do it, but we know a significant number of employers will take a chance on an individual, on many individuals, just to try and get them into the workforce. I think one of the big challenges, Andrew, with the Social Security Amendment Bill at the moment is that they're looking to sort of restrict our job seeker support or welfare support for those that are on temporary or short-term employment. And so that sort of catches that transition or that tethering stage that that someone might be able to get into work for a few hours, but also get that welfare support to sort of buffer their income and gradually work their way up to full-time and eventually off depending on welfare. I mean, that's the ultimate goal for individuals that we work with. But unfortunately, you've got these challenges in the employment sector, these challenges with those that we're supporting, and then you've also got legislative changes that are coming in that are making it a more steeper uphill climb for many of those that we support, which is a small percentage of the population, but it's still, we still need to support those on the margins of society.
So as people are phasing into work, phasing into their capacity to hold down a job, being able to phase out government support during that period of time to take some of the stress off it would be very useful indeed. And I love what you said there about employers wanting to take a chance on people, seeing the value of a human being as more than their productivity. And hey, if there's employers, if there's people with small businesses listening to this at the moment, bit of a challenge to you. Yes, you're wanting to break even. Yes, you're wanting to make a profit for your business. That's understood. But could you take a chance on somebody today who is working towards building capacity on being somebody who's holding down a full-time job? And I thank you for the work that you do with the Salvation Army. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Andrew.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.